The Hollywood elite and also the hip-hop elite continue to tee off on President Trump. But we got someone who has a different perspective on this. We got Wale out and, of course, asked him about how he felt about how President Trump is doing to this point. This was not what I would have expected.
He is not for Donald Trump for sure.
He's not,
but he sees a silver lining.
Indeed.
If there's any silver lining in it, is that people of all walks of life are coming together, and that makes me feel proud, like for humanity. You know what I'm saying? Like, we got a wild person in charge right now, but what I see happening is like less hate amongst different creeds and walks of life. But I see people coming together that don't each other, and that makes me feel good about humanity.
Well, so he goes on to talk about Muslims and gays, and he mentioned a couple of other groups.
Transgender.
So
everybody coming together.
But what it doesn't speak to is, look, Donald Trump, at a point, somebody's got to just remember this. Donald Trump, everybody said his base was going away. They said this for a year before the election, that people weren't going to vote for him. They were leaving in droves.
They never said that his base was going away.
Sure they did. Oh, they absolutely did.
Donald Trump,
when the Access Hollywood thing came out, and they were saying it was gone.
No. Donald Trump's base was loyal to him no matter what happened. The one uniting thing throughout the entire campaign is that the base of Donald Trump never wavered and never left him.
That's true, but the media never understood what the base was. They completely ignored
it. They didn't realize how big the base was.
They didn't realize how big the base was. But to say that the base of Donald Trump ever wavered, Donald Trump did thing after thing after thing, and they stayed with him.
They thought it was wavering.
Regardless of whatever the base, your point about the base was what?
My point about the base was, he's saying everybody's uniting as if to say everybody's abandoning Trump, and I think that just ignores the last 2 years.
No. I don't think that's what he's saying at all. I think that what he's saying is, as Donald Trump's base was stayed strong and became stronger, there was dissension amongst other people, right? Some people liked Hillary, some people liked Bernie, some people did not like Hillary at all, and that led to low voter turnout, and we are where we are right now. I think through the first couple of weeks of the Trump administration, what you're seeing is those people coming together and saying there's a threat to our way of life, a real credible one, and we need to kind of band together and make sure some things don't go left and right.
I think Van's point is probably right in terms of a bigger base coming together, but I don't think that's what Wale was saying.
No, I think that's exactly what he was saying.
And by the way,
he was talking about specific groups and not like the Hillary people and the Bernie people.
He didn't say it, but I think not only President Trump, but I think that base for Trump that you're referring to, I think they are also are leading to what Wale is talking about, this unification of everybody else saying.
Oh no, on both sides are becoming emboldened. I mean, the reality is that a lot of the things that Donald Trump has done since he's been president are things that he promised to do.
Right.
So
so his base, they feel emboldened.
They feel pretty good about what's going on.
That he told the truth.
But there are some people, though, some Donald Trump people that weren't voting for a travel ban, that were voting for economic things like that, and they seem to be a little disenchanted by what they've seen through the first couple of weeks of the administration.
Hey guys, Ross from Charlotte. I think what he is saying is that groups of people who never spoke to each other have decided, wait a second, let's open a conversation, let's see where we're at, and let's decide if we as a group want to work together with each other. And I think that this really has been a good thing. The people who didn't see eye to eye on normal operations and day-to-day activities and personal lifestyle choices have now seen that, as he said, there's an attack on our way of life.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's good or bad, but I think that, yes, I know that I've reached out to people I normally wouldn't have spoken to and said, hey, how's your day going? Are you okay? I'm checking in with people. I'm making myself available to other parties and peers that I might not have said something to in passing.
Hey, I got to say, Reagan, give this dude a T-shirt. That's exactly what Wale was saying.
Well, Van was right, too, though. I mean, come on.
Yeah, thank you.
Now we got to go.
Thank you. Van was right, too. Don't try to, see? That's what you do. You try to divide us. Me and that brother are going out. I'm coming to North Carolina. I'm going to hang out with you, man. I'm going to show you what the strip clubs like there like.
Ross, by the way, bring your wallet because he's not going to pay.
What size shirt do you wear?
XX.
Sir. Okay, well, since you...
Reagan, make it happen.
No. Since you just sided with Van, give him a medium, Reagan.
Oh, God.
Make sure to subscribe to TMZ Live to keep up to date on the latest entertainment news.
And if you want to keep watching, click on one of these videos right now.